Hi guys, Dr. Mandi here from Chiropractic, and today we're going to talk about different transition periods with newborns and babies. So the first one we're going to talk about is swaddling. So typically when a baby is born, you swaddle them in the hospital and when you bring them home because swaddling kind of mimics the mother's womb. However, eventually you want to transition them out of a swaddle. So you definitely want to have them transitioned out by the time that they can roll successfully from their back into their belly, because you don't want them swaddled being able to be on their belly, because then they won't be able to move as easily. So around usually about 2-3 months, that's when you want to slowly start to transition them out. So you don't have to go from full swaddle till no swaddle at all. There's swaddles that you can kind of slowly transition. So typically you start with one arm out. When baby gets comfortable with that, you do 2 arms out. When baby's comfortable with that, then you take the swaddle off and have them no swaddle on their legs at all. So whenever you're finally getting both of their legs out, you can just take the swaddle away completely. There are some kind of sleep sacks that are bigger in the legs and that have their arms out. Those, yes, you can have them sleep on their belly in those because they're able to move a little bit more because they're not as tight and constricted on their body. So the next thing we're going to talk about is when to transition them from either co-sleeping with you or in the bassinet to their own room in their own crib. So pediatricians typically recommend keeping them in your room in a bassinet until they're about 6 months old. Now, sometimes this isn't always feasible, especially because baby's crying, you're not getting a lot of sleep. So for instance, with us, with my daughter, she was sleeping decent until she hit her 4-month sleep regression, and then it was not getting any better for us. However, we realized with her being right next to my bedside, she would wake up anytime we would roll over because the noise would wake her up. So as soon as we transitioned her to her crib, it made a night and day difference. However, the problem that you might run into, because bassinets tend to be a lot smaller than cribs, that when you try to move them to their crib, it's such a wider space and they might get scared and uncomfortable. So what you can do is kind of slowly transition them. So move the bassinet into their bedroom, kind of in the middle of their room, and let them sleep in the bassinet just to get used to the brand new room. Once a couple nights and they're starting to sleep better, then transition them into their crib. You can also start having them nap in their crib throughout the day, and that can help them get more comfortable a little quicker as well. So the next thing we're going to talk about is when to add like pillows and blankets to the baby's crib. So again, your pediatrician recommends waiting until they're after 1 year old to add anything into their crib, whether it's a pillow, a blanket, a stuffed animal, just because at that age they can't kind of wiggle around and get out, and that can increase their suffocation chance. Now, however, sometimes if you're co-sleeping, baby can start to wiggle up onto the pillow about 6 months old, and that's okay too. Just as far as recommendations go, pediatricians say wait till about a year to start to add that. However, with my daughter, we did add pillows and blankets about 1 year old, a little bit after, but she still doesn't sleep on them most of the time. She just kind of plays with them. She still prefers sleeping on her back or her belly without anything around her other than a blanket pulled up over her head. The next thing we're going to talk about is shoes. To be honest, you want baby barefoot as long and as often as possible. They have so many nerve endings, so much proprioception comes from their feet that you want those to develop properly, and they're not going to do that if there's something between their foot and the ground. So yes, when you go out to like outside and they're walking on a sidewalk, especially in town and stuff like that, yes, have them wear shoes because there's lots of gross things on the ground and you don't want them to pick anything up. However, when they're at home or walking in grass, have them barefoot as often as possible, just so that they kind of can develop those nerves and learn how to walk a little bit easier. And the last thing we're going to talk about is introducing regular food. So there's kind of 2 theories that you can kind of go on as far as this goes. Now, your pediatrician will say at your 4-month checkup if they think baby is ready to start kind of pureed foods. So you can start at this age, and that's perfectly fine. They recommend starting one new one about every 3 to 4 days just to see if they have a reaction to that one. So you can start this. Usually they say to start with cereal and then start with different purees. It doesn't really matter if you start with fruits or vegetables. They used to say like start with vegetables because fruits are sweet and they won't like vegetables. However, breast milk formula, all of that is sweet too. So it's really not going to make that big of a difference as far as that goes. Now, the other train of thought is what's called baby-led weaning. So there's some kind of steps that you have to get to before you can start this. So baby must be 6 months old. They must be able to sit on their own with a little bit of assistance. They must show an interest in food. So like if you're holding a burger or something, they're trying to lunge at it and show that they kind of want to eat it. And also that their tongue reflex that they shove out is no longer there. So once they kind of meet these 4 criteria, then you can actually introduce table foods. So you can go from breast milk and formula straight to this. You don't even have to do purees. And you can kind of give them whatever you have for dinner as long as it's cut up appropriate for their age. There are plenty of websites. There's one specific called Baby-Led Weaning and Beyond that will show you, like, say for instance, grapes. At 4 to 6 months old, a grape should be cut this way, or a strawberry should be cut this way. So it shows you how babies should have those foods cut up so that they're a little bit safer. Now, the one thing I advise with more of the baby-led weaning is before you start it, to look up videos. So the videos I'm talking about is to learn the difference between gagging and choking. Usually when babies start to eat regular food, they don't understand, because it's thicker, how quite to swallow it, so they do gag a lot at first, and it does mimic choking. So a lot of times it can make parents very, very uncomfortable, and so they don't want to do it. So just kind of look up those videos, make sure you know the difference between gagging and choking. For instance, we have a de-choker at home just to be on the safe side as we're getting ready to start to introduce solids to my son. Now with my daughter, she is a very picky eater now, and I do believe that is because my husband was a little nervous introducing regular foods, and every time she gagged, he thought she was choking, and so he wanted to go back to purees, and now she's extremely picky. So we're hoping to negate that with my son, because we have the de-choker at home, hoping that he's a little bit more comfortable with that. But that's what I would recommend as far as kind of educating yourself prior to that. Now, there are certain things that babies can and cannot eat, like definitely no honey before 1, kind of like when you were pregnant. Fish that are higher in mercury, definitely don't want to be eating those before 1, but you do want to actually introduce allergens before 1. So like strawberry, a lot of kids are allergic. Peanuts, a lot of kids are allergic. Not necessarily peanuts, but peanut butter. You want to introduce these now, because if you don't, they do have a higher chance of being allergic later on. So if you have any questions about any of this or anything as far as prenatal care or pediatric care, give us a call at the office. Thank you.
Drum and difference. The drum and difference.